All right, what is going on, Colts Nation? So we've seen some news here coming out. Former Raiders second round pick Michael Mayer is reportedly on the trading block. We just saw something about half an hour to an hour ago that the Raiders are really trying to trade him. And a lot of people have kind of linked the Indianapolis Colts potentially to Michael Mayer. Again, he's only 2 years removed, Derek, from being a pretty high pick by the Raiders. And then obviously, we know what happened last year when they, got Brock Bowers. He kind of became that tight end number one, had an incredible rookie season. And, Michael Mayer missed some games due to some personal reasons and just kind of got relegated to a backup role, right? Not a pretty small role, all things considered. So he's only 23 years old, Derek. He's a guy that was phenomenal in his time with Notre Dame and could be a legit option here for the Indianapolis Colts because also, Derek, he will have 2 more years left on his rookie deal, so he'll be cheap in terms of contract and potentially a guy that if you get him for the right compensation, could be a young player that could turn it around with a change of scenery. What are your thoughts here on Michael Mayer as a potential option here for the Colts tight end room?
Yeah, so former Notre Dame Fighting Irish, second round pick for the Raiders. Michael Mayer to me is kind of like what we see with kind of like Drew Ogletree, that kind of guy where he can block and catch the ball. It's such a great thing for Michael Mayer. And I think that, he could be that all around type of tight end that people are, desperately wanting to try to grab, right? We're looking at, potentially Tyler Warren and a couple other tight ends in this draft class. I will say that right off the top that, acquiring Michael Mayer does not mean you can't also go and find yourself a better tight end in the draft class as well. It's too deep and it's too rich of talent to not want to go and get one of those. But, again, Mayer for a mid-round draft pick very much does seem like a very plausible type of trade that the Indianapolis Colts can make where it has some potentially higher upside.
Yeah, and if you're saying we've talked about the idea of should the Colts go double dip in terms of, adding a proven guy or a free agent or somebody who's been in the league for a little bit and go add a rookie. I mean, Derek, this could potentially be a scenario if, like you said, you still address it in the draft somehow, where you have 2 young tight ends on your roster that are going to be cheap for the next couple of years that have a lot of upside, which I think is huge. And, we saw last year just how much this tight end room lacked that, right? A lot of upside in a lot of these guys, right? So, Michael Mayer, obviously a highly touted guy coming out of college. And obviously the Raiders, when they drafted him, they had big things in mind for him. And I thought he had a pretty solid rookie season. Again, Derek, the quarterbacks that he's played with hasn't necessarily been the greatest. And then in year 2, kind of got shelved behind, Brock Bowers and what Brock Bowers did in his rookie year, right? So he really hasn't gotten a chance, last year. He didn't really get a whole lot of a chance in addition to the personal thing that he was dealing with. So could this be a situation where he is in more of a number one role here on this Colts tight end room? I think that would, if you give an opportunity, even like we said, if it's for a mid-round pick, I think that you help yourself be a little bit more flexible in terms of the types of positions that you want to address, right? Because, tight end's obviously a massive need on offense, but say you go get Michael Mayer, well, it doesn't. I don't think completely takes tight end off the list of needs. I think it definitely pushes it down as opposed to some other positions that you could address in free agency with some of the cap, that you're going to have because he's going to be cheap, and also in the draft as well. So it gives you a lot more flexibility in those ways to make some sense there. And I think it would be a really nice fit there for the Indianapolis Colts to get a young tight end that, talking about getting Anthony Richardson some weapons, say it does work out. Like say AR comes out and proves he's the guy, then you got a young tight end that you can pair with him, potentially 2 young tight ends you can pair with him for the foreseeable future. So I do think it makes a lot of sense if you can get him for the right price. Again, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a crazy price, but there are some teams who are interested. So the Colts will definitely have to do what it takes in order to get him.
Yep.
And then I kind of think, like, say it's a third or fourth round pick or something around that ballpark. Like, I kind of look at that and I say, do we honestly think that the player you're going to get right away in those mid rounds is going to be as an immediate of an impact guy as he could be, as Michael
There's
Mayer could be?
there's
You know what I
definitely a
mean?
few. There's definitely quite
It
a
could
few
be.
out there in this draft class that could. But I think what is appealing about Michael Mayer is he's that kind of tight end where Cody, you can put him in any situation, right? He is great for that 12 personnel offense that the Indianapolis Colts like to run, right? Because you're a predominantly run team that has a couple things where you do a lot of motion, you do a lot of zone runs, you do a lot of pulls and all this other stuff. And Michael Mayer is a perfect tight end for those kinds of circumstances. And, I talked with a lot of people and, they're saying like for the tight end that you're trying to get, whether it be in free agency or the draft, you have to make sure that whichever tight end you're getting is going to be best utilized in the offensive system that the Indianapolis Colts run. And Michael Mayer fits that type of mold because he's big enough and strong enough, fast enough to where you can put him out there for any kind of blocking assignment that you need him to. But he's also a guy that can go out and catch the ball whenever you want to. Again, he hasn't had a lot of great opportunities. Again, in 2023, he played in 14 games, had 27 catches for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Not great numbers, but again, you have to remember who was throwing him to football the majority of the year. That was Aiden O'Connell. And then obviously this last year, more of the same, right? Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell being the guys that he was getting the ball thrown to the whole time. And, do you really trust the Raiders offensive scheme? No offense to, Antonio Pierce, who has been there the last couple years, but I don't necessarily trust the Raiders offensive staff as well to really put guys like Mayer in good positions to be able to, utilize him offensively. And that's the thing too, Cody. You're right. With Michael Mayer, he would not be your number one tight end. Whatever situation you had, whether Michael Mayer gets traded here and then that's the only tight end the Indianapolis Colts got the whole rest of this offseason, I don't really have a situation to where he would be the number one tight end. Even if he was, the numbers are never going to be amazing. But it does give you that option to where you can trust him blocking. He has the ability to catch the football. He's been very good at that. All the way in his days at Notre Dame, he was a very good tight end at that. So you get him into a system that can utilize his talents a little better, like Indianapolis. That could be a very good trade, especially since you won't have to do very much to get him. Now, obviously, there's going to be some teams that are going to be competing for him because those sources are coming out that multiple teams have reached out to the Raiders about Michael Mayer. So the Indianapolis Colts might have to get into a little bit of a bidding war, but you still shouldn't have to give up a ton in order to get him.
Yeah, I like the fact that he can do a little bit of both, like we mentioned, right? He can obviously catch the ball, but he can also block too. I think that's definitely important, Derek, because you have a guy that can do a little bit of both, which is definitely important. And maybe that honestly gives you more of the option if you go via draft as well to go maybe focus more in on a receiving tight end purely, for focusing on a guy that more thrives in terms of that. And you still have Michael Mayer who can do a little bit of everything, which is definitely important. And then obviously, you have your tight ends on the roster, Derek, who are more of the traditional like run blocker type of guys, and they have a limited upside in terms of catching the football. And they don't need to catch the football, so that would be great there if you're able to acquire him for a pretty decent price here. And he can be your tight end at least for the next couple years, be on your roster on a really cheap deal here. So that would be great, man, just to add him. But obviously, like you said, there are multiple teams who are interested. So Indy will have to make the best offer to the Raiders in order to make that happen. But I don't think, Derek, we see this a lot, where young, former high round guys are available, right, at positions of need. I mean, and a guy that probably won't, he was a second round pick. I don't think they're going to get a second rounder for him. So if you can get him for a third, fourth rounder, I think it's worth it to me to tap into that for the next couple of
Yeah.
years and
Yeah.
see what you could get with him. I think that would make a ton of sense. And, like I said, give you a little bit more flexibility when you're in terms of your roster and how you want to construct it. If you have a couple cheap guys that you can add that have some upside as well, So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Does Indianapolis have some real interest in Michael Mayer? I think they should. I mean, we've seen them been meeting with like pretty much every tight end in the draft, Derek. So I would think that they understand they really need a tight end or two in order to seriously help out Anthony Richardson. And I think Michael Mayer would be a nice piece here to add to this tight end room. But guys, what do you think? Do you want Michael Mayer here as an Indianapolis Colt? What do you think it would take to acquire him? How do you think he would fit here in Shane Steichen's offense? Let us know all those things in the comments down below. But guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on that notification bell so that you are in the loop when we drop fresh content just like this. Guys, we were really closely approaching 20,000 subscribers. So if you'd help us out and subscribe if you haven't already, we would greatly appreciate that. But again, guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.